yes, he made some mistakes along the way, but he made so many decisions that there was enough positive decisions that he made out of all the good ones and bad ones that it kept propelling us forward. Because not every decision was a good one. But he made enough of them that enough of them were good to keep propelling us forward.
Welcome to Beyond the Bulldog, presented by Mack Trucks. I'm your host, Brian Wright. This podcast celebrates people in the trucking industry and those who move it forward. Through these authentic conversations, you'll engage in personal stories from the driver's seat, behind the businesses, and around the industries that support trucking. We also aim to reveal tricks of the trade that will help you down the road. This is mile marker 38. We're honored to host Pat Godwin Jr., president of the Godwin Group, manufacturers of truck bodies, hoists, and hydraulics. Pat continues his historic documentation of the company his father, Pat Sr., built. In this episode, you'll hear more amazing stories about Pat Godwin Sr. and how Godwin Manufacturing grew through necessity and experience.
You're listening to Beyond the Bulldog, presented by Mack Trucks.
We are here once again with Pat Godwin Jr., president of the Godwin Group. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Oh, it's so exciting. For those that may not have caught the first episodes, please do us a favor, reintroduce yourself, share with us what you do and what your company does.
Yes, I'm a second generation Pat Godwin Jr. Of the Godwin Group. We own several different companies, and manufacturing dump beds and flatbeds for trucks is our primary focus and what we do, as well as central hydraulic system for snow removal.
And here in North Carolina?
Yes, it's located in Dunn, North Carolina, and best way to describe that is roughly between Fayetteville and Raleigh.
The first couple episodes were neat. We had pretty much a testimonial to your father, who is the bigger-than-life kind of guy, started out of his kitchen, essentially, unplugging the oven, plugging in the welder, and starting to work on some vehicles, and that turned into dump and truck bodies in the business it is today. So before we get into the topics, how was the reception from the first set of podcasts?
That was unbelievable. The phone calls that I got and the messages and emails and things of that nature, it was very interesting and very pleasing, to get that kind of response, because I really didn't expect it. One of the things that actually one of our sales team, he was riding down the road listening to the podcast on his radio in his car, and he called me up, because I'm first name basis with all of our team members. He called me up. He says, "Man," he says, "I can't believe this." He says, "I'm riding down the road here," and he says, "I'm listening to this thing," and he says, "It's just like I'm sitting at the kitchen table talking to you." I said, "That's exactly what I wanted." We're just having casual talk, sitting at the kitchen table and telling stories.
So where we were when we stopped with the last one, you were somewhere around high school age. With your experience with the companies, telling stories about your dad and, his religion that he found and battling alcoholism. So let's kind of pick up where we left off and continue down the journey of Godwin Manufacturing.
Okay. I know, from that standpoint that once things turned around, they, like I had said earlier, they turned around in a dramatic fashion. And, there was obviously along the way, there's always trials and tribulations in life, and it's how you react to them. And he had a different way of reacting to them now because he was thinking with clear mind, and they worked into a positive instead of turned out to be a negative. Some of the odd stories, and these are really oddities that I can remember, at the plant where we were behind the police department in Dunn, he had just quit work for Pepsi-Cola maybe 5-6 years into being in business. And somehow he got him an old Pepsi machine, put it on the outside of the building. And I thought, what's he doing? A Pepsi machine on the outside of the building? Well, he gutted it. He basically turned it into a refrigerator. Went to the local hardware store, plumbing supply place, and got him a 50-foot coil of half-inch copper, soft copper, put it inside the machine, and plumb water through it and ran the line inside the building, drill a hole in the center block wall of the building, and had a bubbler water fountain. Our first water fountain was an old Pepsi machine with a coil of copper inside of it. And I can tell you one thing, with the way he knew how to tinker with a soda machine or whatever, that water would freeze your teeth in the summertime. So just some of those little odd things, but he didn't have the money to buy a water fountain at the time. As I recall, they were like $750 back then, and that was a lot of money, for a water fountain back then. But that's how he made one.
Well, my son just started college, and he's doing the engineering route.
Okay.
And he finally got his first hand at welding.
Oh,
and he's sending me pictures of welding. It shows here that there's some credit that needs to go out for teaching your dad to weld, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And one of those people that I'll have to give credit to, and I forgot to do that the first couple of times around, is Elastus Smith in Newton Grove. He is one of the ones that was instrumental in helping teach my dad to weld. Even though my dad was working at Pepsi-Cola at the time and he worked in their shop, Mr. Smith was instrumental in helping teach my dad how to weld. And ironically, one of his sons ended up with that welder that he learned how to weld on. And we have it now. It's actually in our local City of Dunn museum.
Is it really?
It's in our local museum. Sure did.
Without that skill set, you're not building dump bodies and fixing tractors and all the other stuff.
I acquired it from Mr. Smith's son, and I refurbished it, and that was back in the late 90s. I refurbished it and put it all back together. And I guess it's still usable. I'm not sure, but it looks somewhat like new on the outside. And but it is actually in our local museum in town.
That's terrific. It says here your dad had an F-Series Mack.
Yes, that was his second vehicle. The first one, as I said earlier, was a 1956 Ford that he had a welder on, the Hobart welder on the back that he went out and did repairs for farmers. And the second one he owned was a 711 F-Series cab-over day cab Mack that had 2 gear sticks in it. I remember riding in the passenger seat and watching him trying to drive this thing down the street with 2 gear sticks in it. He would hold the steering wheel with one knee and keep it straight while he was over here changing gears with both sticks in the cab of the truck. And, the linkage on a cab-over truck is kind of unusual anyway. And to be able to see him do that was rather interesting.
Did you ever get a chance to drive that?
No, I didn't. He didn't keep that truck long, and I'm not sure why. I was too young at the time to know.
Yeah.
But he didn't keep that truck very long, and maybe it was just too much for him. I don't know, because what we ended up doing is scaling down and going back with some smaller trucks, because that was probably too much truck at the time for what he needed.
And it shows here there's a story about a World Book Encyclopedia.
Yes. My mother, probably, no one knew this, but probably one of the best things my mother ever did for me and my sister Pam at the time was buy a set of World Book Encyclopedias. And I'll probably have to admit that I used them probably more than Pam did. I'm not sure. But in my quiet time, when I'm not doing something, I'm sitting on the couch or in the recliner, and I've got one of those books in my lap, and page by page, picture by picture, word by word, that's how I learned a lot of things, is through that World Book Encyclopedia. And when I got to the end of it, I would start all over again, because there's always be something I didn't remember or forgot or, just glanced over or whatever. But as far as a teaching tool, I don't know of anything my mom could have done any better at the time. You don't see stuff like that anymore. It's all on the internet at your disposal.
Yeah.
But that was a good teaching tool at the time, and which also reminds me of the story of Mom always gave us a certain amount of money to use for Christmas. We had a budget, so to speak. And when the Sears catalog would come in the mail, me and my sister would wear that thing out and get pencil and paper and add and subtract, multiply, and everything else to try to use every penny of what she had budgeted for us for Christmas.
Yeah.
Not thinking at the time and just being too young to know, we got a lot more than what she had budgeted for us. But we didn't think about that.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best math teaching tool is for us to sit down and go through the Sears catalog and write down these things we wanted and the price of it, and and be able to work on a budget for toys and stuff that we wanted for Christmas. I
remember vividly Toys R Us when they were in business. My brother and I, we had birthdays really close to each other.
Okay.
And our parents took us there, and I think it was $50 at the time. And this is in the 80s, right? And they're like, okay, you've got $50. Go buy whatever you want. And we're like, perplexed. Do you buy that one big thing, or do you buy 100 little things?
Yep.
And so similar lesson as far as budgeting, managing what you're looking for too.
And the interesting part there as well is my mom had a budget fixed for us. She knew what she was doing, but we didn't know what she was doing. If we would go just $1 or $2 over, no, you got to take something off that list. You got to redo it, because you went over budget.
Yeah.
And all it was a game for mom. But it was a good learning lesson for us kids, for sure.
I love it. It's funny. I hadn't thought about that memory in a long time, but, here we are smiling.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about the business, Godwin Manufacturing. How did it work with all the generations? It's a family business, and there's the personal dynamic, the work dynamic. People are changing.
I would have to say that ours was a little bit unusual. And this is the way we were raised. It was the way we were taught, and we didn't know any different. And quite honestly, we do the same thing, and it works for us. If you have family members in the business, it can turn into a fiasco if you're not careful. In our business, everybody has a job to do, and they pull their weight. And it's just that way. And I will have to say, growing up, me and my sister Pam, and then later in life, Phyllis too, while we were at work, we would call my dad Pat, because he was the boss there, and he was referred to as Pat. But just as soon as we left and went home, he was Dad. And there was a sharp dividing line between work and home life. It had to be that way because he had to be the boss at work, even though sometimes we didn't like it, but it was what it was. But same thing at home too. He was Dad at home, and at work he was Pat. I would have to say that's probably the one thing he instilled in us children that we realized that is important, and you almost have to have that in order to be successful in some families, and it worked for ours. It also helped us with the business side of it by operating that way, family versus business life. It helped keep us in line and kept that gray area out of there because we had to be successful in order to be able to have things in our personal life. They complemented each other, and you have to have night and day.
What happened when one of the family members weren't pulling their weight or someone was going above and beyond?
Well, that was his job both ways. Now, I will say that he's not one that would brag on you a whole lot. And we'll get into the story about one of those a little bit later on. But he bragged on you some, but not a lot. Mom bragged on us more than anything else because Dad would come home and tell Mom these things, that we were learning and what we were doing and stuff like that. Mom would brag on us more than Dad would. But something wasn't going right. You knew about that straight up. And he was a take no prisoners kind of person. That if you weren't pulling your weight, he got you lined up, and you did what you're supposed to do.
How did you manage it when business bled into family time? Would you just shut it down there, or how did that work?
Yeah, we just had to do what we had to do. Whether it's working overtime, coming in early, working on the weekends. Yeah. I remember a few times, back in the years 70s and 80s that there was a few times I worked 7 days a week. We were behind on jobs and stuff like that. And that's not something we make a habit of doing, but the time just dictated that we needed to do that. And but whatever it was that needed doing, we wanted to make sure that we were getting the job done. And sometimes he let us off a little bit early on Friday if we did really good that week, and sometimes we'd had to work 7 days a week to make sure that we got done what we needed to.
How big was the business at this point? Like, how much land is there?
Yeah, actually, back in those days, we're probably talking about 10 to 15 people, so it wasn't a very big operation. And I would say that when we moved from behind the police department in Dunn to out in the country on Highway 421 outside of the city limits. The original purchase of the property there was about 4 acres, as I recall. And there was a gentleman by the name of Ed Tart that my dad bought that property from. We built the shop, and oh my gosh, that building was added on to about 7 times. We just kept adding on to the same building and did that about 7 times.
Yeah.
And the other interesting side of that is Mr. Tart's sister, her last name was Westbrook because she was married. She would want a little extra spending money for whatever reason. She would come to my dad and, offer to sell him a little bit of land to get a little extra spending money. Yeah. And the interesting part there is there wouldn't be a lot of road frontage, but it would go a quarter mile back up into the woods here. It would be a strip maybe 50, 75, or 100 feet wide, and she sold it to him one strip at a time. And interestingly enough, right now we have a total of about 12 acres in our Dunn facility. As the Godwin Manufacturing facility. Mm-hmm. At one time, there were 17 deeds to that property because the initial purchase was about 4 acres. And then as she, wanted a little extra spending money, she wasn't for lacking or anything. She just wanted a little extra spending money, whatever. She would just sell my dad a little bit at a time. He never negotiated on the price or whatever because when she came to him, it was price fair, and he gave her what she asked for. But at one time there were 17 deeds to that property.
Wow!
And since then it has been consolidated. Mm-hmm. But 17 deeds at one time.
That makes the paperwork easier. That
absolutely, way. For sure.
How does the taxing work? Oh my goodness! Right?
Exactly.
So it looks like we have some building projects on the same property. It says that there are no less than 25 at a time.
Yes.
What does that mean?
In addition to the 7 times that we built onto the existing building, and I could walk through and show you those additions. At one point, the roof lines get low enough that you need a certain amount of height to get a truck in there and work on it. So we started building separate buildings instead of continuing to build on the existing and original building. It got advantageous for us to start splitting it up. And some of that property we had bought prior, we built new buildings and started separating some of the departments and things like that. And, of course, hindsight being 20/20 now, we wish it all was under one roof. But, it is what it is. And but there is a progression that I was sitting in my office a few weeks ago, trying to figure out how many building projects that we had. And over the years, there have been no less than 25 building projects with the 100 acres that we've got there. We're only utilizing about 50 of it right now. But there's 100 acres there. We're utilizing about half of it. And no less than 25 building projects. We had something going almost all the time.
What created this growth?
Doing the right things, making a good product, selling at a competitive price, making sure the customer's happy, and you'll get repeat business from that. And that was kind of his philosophy. It was no different than some of the things that he learned at Pepsi Cola. Now, he couldn't control the price at Pepsi, but he can control a lot of those other things. And so that he learned from those and applied that to his new business.
So what's the A-team?
Oh, gosh. The A-team was a group of people, and sometimes it would start out like maybe 6 or 8 people. And I think at one time in the mid-'80s that it grew to probably 15 to 20 people, that the A-team would go above and beyond. We all worked together. We were just a special team that everybody brought their specialty to the table. And we were working on projects that needed special attention or we needed to catch up on some things or something like that. And we would call the A-team together. And after hours, which, they were getting paid overtime and stuff like that too, but we would call it the A-team after hours, and everybody would have their role to play. Some of them would be doing electrical work, and some of them would be doing hydraulic plumbing. Some of them would be doing welding. Some of them drilling holes in truck frames, and bolting things onto the truck frame. So the A-team had their specialty, and it was a group of people, depending on how many we needed at the time the jobs needed doing. The A-team got together and did those things. Matter of fact, there's quite a few of the A-team members that are still working for us 40 years later. Some of them were really good hard workers, and some of them were crazy. You just never know, never knew which one you were going to get. We've had some crazy ones too. That I wouldn't do some of the things that they've done. I've seen them do, but we try to keep that down to a minimum because above all else, we want to work safe.
Sure.
And make sure everybody goes home and comes back in the morning like they're supposed to.
What was the bond that made them tick, right? So what was it that allowed them to be the A-team to get the jobs done on the special projects that made it work so flawlessly?
The only way I can describe that is my dad was charismatic. And him being a charismatic individual, he could get you to do something you wouldn't ordinarily do. But when everybody got together and the team gelled, that's something you really wanted to be a part of.
And that raises the bar for everybody too.
Absolutely. And we got so much work done in a shorter period of time than we would get otherwise because those guys were the cream of the crop and still are, because some of those A-team members are still there.
Yeah. And, they raise the bar for everybody else too because there's now something to aspire to. The A-team can pass along the lessons that they've learned in working with others, whether it's the pace of work or the quality of work, however it happens to be too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you purchased a truck hoist product line.
Yes, that was in the late 70s, around 78, 79. My dad had an opportunity to purchase a product line from a company in North Dakota. When he acquired that product line, they were phasing out of what they call the old style product into the new style. And my dad made an agreement with them to buy all of their old style inventory. And so there was enough of it. They actually had to load it up on rail cars, and they shipped it to Dunn, and we unloaded it and made places for it. And it was understood. And this was a product. This is truck hoist, the dumping mechanisms that go up under farm trucks and things like that. And when we bought this product line, it was rail car to North Carolina. We unloaded it, put it in inventory, and as we were using up that inventory, it was agreed that we were going to be making these ourselves. And so that worked out really good. It was, I would have to say my dad was innovative when it came to that because we were buying a different brand at the time. And then when he made this deal, that was a competitive brand to what we were using. And he bought everything they had, the old style. Old style worked fine for us.
I was going to ask you why he committed to that instead of using the new style.
Well, no particular reason. There's a lot of times I never knew what was in my dad's mind. I just followed his direction. And in the end, sometimes things revealed themselves. Yeah. But it was known at the time that we were going to start building this commodity or this product after we used that inventory. So I had a deadline. He commissioned me to start a machine shop. We needed to start manufacturing hydraulic cylinders. And I was the first and only employee in our machine shop that manufactured hydraulic cylinders. And thanks to a cousin that I've got on my mom's side named Russell Lee, he was a machinist by trade, worked at a facility there in Dunn as a machinist. And he would come by after hours and stuff and help us get set up because that was at a time that we were changing from regular tool steel ground by hand tooling to inserts, carbide inserts and things like that. And he advises that this carbide insert thing, it's up and coming, and you probably want to go with that because I see some promise in it, and we did. And that was obviously one of the best decisions we made in that respect. Is taking his advice and using carbide inserts as far as the tooling. But I was the first and only employee in our cylinder shop, and understanding how to read micrometers and cut snap ring grooves and things of that nature, and help manufacture cylinders. Was
it perfect from the get-go?
No, it wasn't. We had a test stand, and not only was I machining all these parts, I wasn't actually welding them together because I was kind of in the machine shop side of it. But once they welded these cylinders together, we would test every one of them, 100% testing. And we had made our own test stand. And we'd get back over there in the corner and fire the test stand up and start testing cylinders and And every once in a while we might have a leaker or something like that and need to do repairs on it to get it right. But obviously that was the goal, is to have as few rejects as possible, because it's difficult to repair a hydraulic cylinder that's already got oil in it. It's not easy to weld to. But once in a while, the guy that was assembling the cylinders, he wasn't putting the snap ring in quite right. And he starts putting hydraulic pressure behind it, and boom, oil's going everywhere. We made a cover to go over the top of the machine so it would contain it. But it was still, it wasn't anything that was dangerous because it was full of hydraulic oil. Hydraulic oil doesn't compress. Air will compress. I would rather deal with 3,000 pounds of hydraulic pressure than 125 pounds of air pressure. And if you understand the difference between pneumatics and hydraulics, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Because compressed air is dangerous. Hydraulic oil is less dangerous.
So you're building your hydraulics for your dump beds. Are you selling them outside of your company, or just doing that internally?
Just at that time, we're strictly doing it internally. And based on the inventory that we needed to keep, we just tried to keep the inventory levels up where they needed to be. And those different models that we were making in that product line, there would be seasons that we would go through, and sometimes you'd be really busy and working overtime to try to keep up and keep inventory there, and then other times it was a lot easier, because we were out of season or something.
Celebrate Mack trucks with the best merchandise in the industry. Show off your style with Mack trucker hats, t-shirts, hoodies, and more. There's also a wide variety of coffee cups, drinkware, bags, and toys. We have the new 125th anniversary collection, as well as our popular old school logos for men and women. Mack Shop is offering free shipping on your order of $49 or more by using the discount code SPEND49. You can take advantage of this coupon and others at mackshop.com. Just click on Mack Coupons to learn more. For the people wanting authentic Mack Trucks gear, visit mackshop.com. We are here with Pat Godwin, president of the Godwin Groups. We're talking about his business in Dunn. Godwin Manufacturing, building dump bodies. They're now building their own hydraulics. So it looks like you broke the mold on local buildings as you continue to grow.
Yeah. When we needed to build a building, we didn't hire that done. We did it ourselves.
Okay.
So at any given time, some of the guys that were working in shop had been in construction trades before. And they kind of knew what was going on and what to do. They just needed a leader, and that was my dad. And so when we got ready to build buildings, my dad would get the A-team together. And, if production allowed it, if we weren't so busy at the time and production allowed it, he would have his little group of the A-team that would be permanently working on construction. And then of the afternoon, when the rest of us got finished doing what we were doing with a regular job, then we go out there and help as well. So that worked out well. But the interesting part about the buildings that we're speaking of is that these buildings were manufactured. The columns and stuff, vertical columns inside, were poured in place concrete columns. We would stand forms up on a footing and pour the concrete in from the top along with rebar and everything that was placed in it. And these buildings literally were concrete columns on the inside. This one building in particular, we call it Station 2. This particular building needed that because if you go with a normal metal building, there's a lot of X-bracing and stuff in there to make the building more rigid, especially with a lot of overhead bridge cranes. I don't even know how many bridge cranes this building has in it, but it's got a lot. And with these bridge cranes being as heavy as they are and carrying the heavy loads that they are and being 15, 20 feet up in the air, that's a lot of tension in a metal building. So you got to do a lot of X-bracing and stuff. My dad wanted to kind of shy away from that if he could. And so what we did is we had poured in place concrete columns. We leveled the ground, dug the footings for all these columns, and as we started putting these columns up, you stand back at it from the highway, and it looked like Easter Island. Seriously, looked like a giant version of Easter Island with these columns just sticking up right out of the ground.
Where did you come up with the idea to do that?
That's my dad. I have no idea where he got that one from, but that was my dad's idea. In fact, As we got finished and ready, or finished with that part of the project and got ready for building inspection, we called a local building inspector. He wasn't qualified to inspect the building. He had to contact the bridge department from North Carolina DOT out of Raleigh. And they came down and inspected the building and said, Mr. Godwin says, you're doing something a little strange here, but we get it. We understand it being from the bridge department. You have the equivalent here to a 3-deck parking garage.
Okay.
And that's what they told him. You have the equivalent to a 3-deck parking garage right here as far as structural integrity. And we understand you don't want a bunch of X-bracing and stuff inside this building.
So it looks like you made your own bridge cranes as well.
Yes, we did. And that was another thing that was very unique. In the same building that we made the concrete columns and built, put the steel, from the outside it looks like a metal building. But when you walk on the inside, there's all these concrete columns that are, sticking up, spaced appropriately and add structure to the inside of the building for the bridge cranes. The bridge cranes, we made them ourselves. And part of that was from the A-team. Part of it was just normal production. And Dad would order the I-beams and stuff like that. And believe it or not, 40 years later, we still have some in operation. A lot of people says, well, how did you make a hydraulically operated bridge crane?
Yeah.
It wasn't that hard to do. If you know the basics of hydraulics, it's not difficult. You just do the math on it. Make sure you got all your stuff right. The easiest way to describe it in the simplest terms, because I've explained it many times over the years, is you just make a regular bridge crane out of I-beams and stuff like you normally would. But instead of putting electric motors and stuff like that on it, you put hydraulic motors into place. And like for the lifting cable for the crane, that was a reeving winch kind of thing. It wasn't a drum winch that would wind the cable up like you put on the front of a pickup or something like that. This was a cylinder laying down sideways, and as this cylinder pulled in, it had sheaves on the end of it, and it would lift this cable because it was stretching this cable to length horizontally in the bridge crane structure. That's kind of where we got some of our experiences in hydraulics and stuff like that. And that's when the bug bit me with hydraulics and understanding how powerful and what it would do.
Because you were building the cylinders at the time.
Yeah, building cylinders. And then, I was kind of in charge of getting the hydraulic plumbing and stuff worked out on it, stuff like that. But anyway, the way these bridge cranes work is it was a 20 horsepower motor driving a hydraulic pump. And then it went through some hydraulic valves that made the bridge, the trolley, and the lift, the cable lift, work on the bridge crane. And the pivot button that you hold in your hand to control the crane, that was low voltage. And then you had a high voltage 20 horsepower motor up above. And the hydraulics were simple. I can understand hydraulics better than I can electricity, even to this day. Yeah, because hydraulics, you get wet, you did something wrong. With electricity, you grabbed the wrong wire. I didn't see that coming.
Right. Yeah. You know when you've done something wrong with electricity for sure.
Exactly.
So what is your main role with the business at this point? So, I mean, you're doing hydraulics, but as far as like position, are you like the shop manager, operations guy?
Honestly, I don't know that I had a title. I didn't even have business cards or anything and didn't really need them. I was just doing my thing where I was needed at. I will say that there's not a single job that we've ever had at that place that I have not done at some point in time. There was some jobs that I had there that I didn't do them long because there was something else that needed doing worse. Yeah. I can honestly say there's not a single job that we have there that I haven't done, except in recent years on the electronic side. And that's a whole different story with Allied Mobile Systems. I have the ideas in my head, because I understand my way around a truck, and I'm in a driver's mind trying to figure out how can I make this thing better, safer, and something that they would like. Yeah. Because I've got that driver mentality, so to speak. Because I've had a Class A CDL for so many years. I've had a Class A CDL for 46 years. Yeah. Straight. And
was it a chauffeur's license?
Yeah, chauffeur's license when I first got it. It sure was at 18 years old. Yep. And I still use it. I wasn't on the highway this morning, but I was at work before everybody else got there this morning because there was a solution I needed to come up with on some trucks. And I was moving trucks in and out of the bays and stuff, doing measuring and things of that nature because it's just something I needed to do before I left to come here today. Going back in time, I basically just kind of did what needed to be done, and I guess I kind of migrated to the hydraulic side of it. That was probably what interested me most, as well as the electrical side, 12-volt DC electrical. Some of these contraptions we came up with looked like a bowl of spaghetti, but it's something I like. We color-coded the wires, and they were the right size and right length and all this kind of stuff, and there's something to be said for that. I don't have that I don't have the patience for that anymore.
There's something gratifying about getting electricity right.
You're right.
When you get it and there's spark and it works the way it's supposed to, you're like, okay, don't have to touch that again.
Yeah. But the good part about that is I've got good people in place that can do that job now. I still understand it. If they run into a problem, whatever, need some help, or I'll get a phone call from a customer and say, hey, how would you typically do this? I might have to go out in the shop and check with the guys in the shop, and I do that quite often. Okay, how do we do this? How do we wire this up? Because I'm not standing out there all day, every day, understanding how they're doing these things and get my answer and get back with the customer. Yeah. Used to it wasn't that way. I could spit out the answer right off the top of my head.
So early 2000s, you learned something about your dad's health.
Yes. Early 2000s, he came down with something called ITP. You had to look that up because I can't pronounce the name properly.
That's why we have acronyms.
Yeah, big name like mayonnaise. But he came down with a blood ailment called ITP, and it was chronic. It was bad. It's when your blood platelets start going down and your blood won't clot. A normal platelet count for me or you would be 150,000 to 400,000. And his got so low, it was a challenge to be able to know what his count got down to. And he was literally walking critical is how he was classified. I don't know that they even had a cure for back at that time, but I do know that the doctor he went and saw about it started prescribing steroids. And, steroids can be a good thing for some things, but they can be a really bad thing too when they're abused.
Yeah.
The story I was told is that the doctor kept increasing the dosage of steroids to try to get this turned around, this problem turned around. There toward the end of getting prescriptions filled and stuff like that, supposedly he got a prescription that was just so strong, the pharmacist says, I'm not going to fill this until I actually talk to the doctor. I'm not even going to call the office. I'll call the office to get in touch with the doctor, but I will speak to the doctor before I fill this prescription. That's what I was told. So that's how high the steroid levels were. It was, I would guess, in dangerous territory.
Yeah. And your dad was a big guy.
He was a big guy, and he blew up like a bullfrog. I mean, really? He didn't feel good, and well, he did for a little while until they started increasing the dosages. Whatever it was, I can only attribute to the turnaround of the ITP because it could be a detrimental thing. I would have to attribute the steroids to turning that around for him, and I'm not sure that that's what it was. There was other things going on too. I'm not sure.
But the risk was you get a cut, you don't stop bleeding.
Oh, absolutely.
And working in your business, you're hands-on and there's always
and he didn't
a hazard.
He did not let it slow him down. He did everything that he felt like doing, and we tried our best to, get him just to take some rest at home. Nope, this is my home. This is my second home.
Yeah. And
so he did just like I always did, and he was classified as walking critical, and the local emergency services were on notice that if anything whatsoever happened to him, to take him to the hospital in Raleigh immediately or he could bleed out.
Was this ailment short-term? Did he always have it and you just didn't know about it?
I would have to say that it's short-term, if you can call it that it seemed like all of a sudden that it happened. He was he had blood pooling up under his skin and stuff like that, and like the older people do periodically when they get a little injury. But he was a lot younger than that, and it came on. It had a fairly quick onset, and I don't know exactly how long it lasted, but it was more than a year.
Yeah.
And possibly upwards of 2 years, but it slowly started going away, and everything became normal again. And this was also at the time that we were in between the purchases of R&S and Galleon. So he was still buying companies and stuff and just conducting his everyday business. And with this situation, and a lot of people don't understand how critical this was. If he got in an accident with his pickup or whatever going home or something like that, he could have been in trouble quickly.
I was going to ask if he started relinquishing some of his responsibilities, providing you some more.
No, but there are several things that happened to him over the years that I think he realized that, none of us are going to be here forever. I think there's some things that probably occurred to him over the years, and as he got older, did he realize he was going to have to do things a little bit different. And that's kind of where there was no official date. There was no official, anything that led up to all this and says, okay, from this point on, this is what you do. I guess you could say we just kind of grew into those positions, me and my sisters, and we started taking the responsibility, and he was slowly, relinquishing that because he knew that we needed to do that. And if you're going to pass something from generation to generation, you need to do that.
So it looks like you guys had a bond offering for a DOT project.
Yeah, my dad 1 year for a particular state DOT, and it was not North Carolina, just for the record. But for a state DOT, they put out a bid for us to upfit some trucks that they had, put dump bodies on them. And they were asking for a bid bond. And a bid bond is something you typically get through an insurance company to ensure that you're going to do this project. And if you don't do this project, the insurance has to pay someone else to be able to do it if you happen to default. So my dad was kind of feeling his oats. He says, okay, we're going to put this to rest. And so what he ended up doing is he got prices on bid bonds, and I don't remember how much it was, but it was more per truck than he wanted to pay. Basically an insurance policy on each truck for him performing. So he says, I don't want to pay that. He says, I'm going to do this a different way. He wrote a check for the amount that he proposed to do the contract for, which is basically a cash bond. In other words, at the end of this contract, if I perform, you're going to pay me this amount of money, Mr. DOT. Well, in order to satisfy your cash or your bid bond, I'm going to write you a check for how much this contract is worth, how much I'm bidding, and you keep that money until I finish and perform, and then you give me that money back. And that was the strangest thing that happened. He sent that check along with the bid, and the guys at the DOT had never seen anything like this before. Said, what in the world do we do with this? I've never seen this before. The guy sent a check for the amount that he bid on this contract as his bid bond. And it finally, it went up a few levels, and one of the guys in the upper levels, he said, man, you deposit that check now because we're going to earn interest on that check while he's performing this contract, and then we'll write him his money back without interest. We're going to keep the interest, and we're going to write him a check for that amount, same amount, at the end of the contract. And that's how it happened. But it created chaos with that DOT for a little bit because they didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do that with today's insurance?
Yeah, that's true.
Holy cow, to be able to just foot the bill for it, and not have...
Well, interestingly enough, the bid bond for this contract, it didn't last many years after. They realized they didn't need it anymore.
Did you know?
Did you know the fifth wheel coupling patent was granted January 25th, 1916? The credit for this invention goes to Charles Martin of the Martin Rocking Fifth Wheel Company 1 year earlier. While the semi-trailer had already been invented by August Fruehoff, truckers would have to wait for their trailer to be unloaded before moving on. Martin's fifth wheel facilitated drop-and-hook operations, the ability for drivers to drop a full trailer and pick up an empty or preloaded one, an essential key to modern logistics and efficiency. It offered fleet owners the flexibility to optimize the use of both tractors and trailers, since a single power unit could swap trailers as needed. In essence, the Martin fifth wheel transformed the semi-trailer from a single integrated vehicle into a flexible, interchangeable system, which fundamentally shaped the development of the modern, efficient freight distribution network.
This has been Did You Know?
We are here with Pat Godwin Jr., president of the Godwin Group, joining us for the second time. Let's talk about Good Roads. It's one of the companies you have.
Yes. Good Roads was a company we bought about 2011. We were buying Good Roads plows. We were a distributor at the time. It got to a point that that current owner of Good Roads wanted to divest of the company. He wasn't old, but he was getting far enough along in age that his dad owned a CPA firm, and this gentleman that owned it wanted to go, work for his dad and hopefully take over the business, because that's what his formal training or former teaching was in, is in CPA. But he actually owned this company, so he was doing everything. It was a good opportunity for him to step out of it. And so he approached us about that. And I told him, I says, "You're not serious about this." He says, "Yeah, I am serious about this. I want to sell Good Roads." And so it went on for probably about 60 or 90 days. And he mentioned that about 3 times over that period of time. We were talking back and forth about business. We had stuff on order and he was shipping. And every so often he would mention that, I want to sell Good Roads. And I says, "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" He said, "Yes." He says, "I am serious and I want you guys to buy it." The interesting part of that story is, I said, "Okay, well, how much do you think you want for it?" He paused for a few seconds. He gave me a number. I says, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah, that's what I want for it." And so I took it back to the management team. And at that time, they were, I think it was 5 members on the management team. 3 of them were family members. And my first visit to the management team to talk about this, because we did this as a group, I said, "Okay," I said, "we got an opportunity to buy Good Roads and start making our own snow plows and salt spreaders. We've talked about this for 20 years and we've just never done anything with it. But now we have an opportunity that this guy wants to sell Good Roads, and we have an opportunity to buy it." And one of my sisters says, "Well, how much does he want for it?" And I gave what the number was, and she looked me directly in the eye and leaned forward and says, "Can we cut the check today?" And my dad at the end of the table said, "Oh, wait a minute," says, "something's not quite right here." And, "What do you mean?" Says, "Something's not right. We're going to find some surprises around the corner or something like that. This don't sound right. This is too good to be true and don't sound right." And so we just kind of left it at that. My dad didn't know this gentleman like I did, because me and this gentleman were on first name basis, and I had known him for years, and I knew a lot about this guy and how he's natured and stuff like that. And so, a week or 2 later, came back to the management team and said, "Look, he's very adamant that he wants us to buy this company." And my dad says, "There's something not right. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm worried about this. Something's going to raise his angry head at some point in time, and we're going to be in a mess." I won't tell you the whole story. I'll keep part of it to myself, but I'll tell you what's interesting. But I went back to the management team the 3rd time a few weeks after that. And my dad says, "Okay," says, you're fairly persistent about this." He says, "If this is what you want to do, you go ahead and do it." He says, "But I don't want anything to do with this." He says, "Something's not right here." He says, "I don't know what it is, but something's not quite right. And I don't think we need to do this." He says, "But if you're this persistent about it, you take care of it. You buy the company, you do the due diligence, you move the inventory to North Carolina, you move whatever equipment you need to North Carolina, and you do every bit of it." He says, "Because I don't want anything to do with it." I says, "I'll take it." I did all the paperwork and the due diligence, and I helped drive some of the trucks, from Indiana to North Carolina, relocating inventory and setting up shop with some of his fixtures and things like that in our shop. We had sold plows and spreaders for a number of years, but we had not manufactured any. And interestingly enough, the equipment that we had was actually larger than the equipment that he had, because we built dump beds. They're larger than spreaders and plows.
Yeah.
So our equipment was larger, and so we didn't need a lot of his equipment. After I moved everything to North Carolina, got ready to go into production, I made a contract with this gentleman. I was going to pay him so much per week or per day or per hour, whatever how it was written, for him to come to North Carolina and spend time with me to teach me how to do this. I knew the basics of it, but I needed to know the intimate details about how to build snowplows and how to build salt spreaders. And he did that for the first, let's say, month. He came down every other week. And then things started, I started learning and picking up. So he would come down every third week. And then after a while, he would come down maybe once a month, for a little while. And kind of got there toward the end, and I told him, I said, I owe you a lot of money at this contract. All these trips and hotel bills and meals, and I owe you a lot of money. He looked at me, he says, no, you don't. I says, what do you mean? No, I don't. He says, you don't owe me anything. I says, I have a contract with you. He says, tear it up. I said, you're kidding me. I owe you a lot of money. I owe you tens of thousands of dollars. No, you don't. You don't owe me a dime. Because you've done with Good Roads exactly what I hoped you would do. You're going to take it to another level. Wow. He says, I don't want a dime out of you for that. And the other interesting tidbit there, too, is when we purchased Good Roads, he did not want the money right then. He says, I'll let you know when I want the money. He says, I got a child that's going to be going to college, and I'll probably be needing some money for that. He didn't have to sell the company.
Yeah.
So don't think that he was in trouble, because he was not. When we purchased the company and moved it to North Carolina with no money down and started manufacturing snowplows and salt spreaders, and at some point in time, the guy says, okay, I think I'm about ready for money now. Yeah. And he wouldn't take any money for, helping us get started. And I legally owed him that because we had a contract.
Yeah.
Both of us ripped up the contract.
So what did your dad think? When the dust settled and he's like, there's something bad about this deal.
Now we go back to where your dad doesn't brag on you very much.
Yeah.
I was down there in Good Roads and was working my butt off. I had to learn every job in order to teach every job. So this gentleman would come down here and spend some time with me and teach me how to do these things, and I was learning it one job at a time. And so what ended up happening is after we went into production, my dad came down there on a rainy day, pulled up in the shop on his little S10 pickup, and got out and was rambling around and came over there where I was at. And he said, son, he says, look like you guys are tracking a lot of mud in here, in the building and all, because outside the building was kind of crush and run. It would get muddy a little bit when it rained and all. He says, you're tracking a lot of stuff around in here. He says, come to spring of the year, when the weather breaks, he says, we're going to start pouring some concrete and laying some asphalt. And that's about all he said, and turned around and walked away. But you know what? He didn't have to say anything else, because at that point, he did buy in. Because up until that point, it was all on my shoulders. And but at that point, he was buying in because he was willing to put some money out to pour concrete and lay asphalt so we wouldn't be tracking mud into the building trying to build snowplows and salt spreaders. So he didn't have to brag on me. That was his way of bragging.
Well, and job well done.
Yeah, I guess so.
So your dad wanted to be a cattle baron.
Oh, yeah. He had always wanted to have some cattle back there in we call it the lower 40 is what we called it. Back behind the plant, he made it was basically a feedlot back behind the plant. We had grain bins. We had a barn back there. We had all the chutes and stuff like that for the cattle and barbed wire all down through the woods and the swamp, to keep them in. He literally, had cattle down there in just non-sustainable numbers. At one time, he had 1,200 head of cattle on 50 acres.
Okay.
And it was a feedlot. If you're going to have cattle grazing in your pasture at home or whatever, you don't put nearly that many. But he had a feedlot. He would go to the sale and buy, I call them mid-sized cattle from the sale, and then he would top them out. By feeding them grain and stuff like that. He had so many cows that usually when you sell cows to market, you sell them to a broker, and then the broker sends the truck by to pick them up and carries them to the packing plant. There's a middleman there. He had so many cattle at one time, he didn't need the broker. He could get up a truckload of cattle anytime he wanted to and load them up himself and he sell them to the packing plant. So he was cutting out the middleman there because he had so many. And all it was basically was a feed lot. He was grinding his own feed.
Yeah.
In the beginning, he was buying feed, but he bought his own hammer mill to grind feed and feed the cattle. And he got into it in a big way. But what ended up happening is it was in the mid to late 90s, I believe it was, that there was a terrible drought in Texas. And the Texas ranchers were flooding the market with cattle, and the bottom fell out.
Oh.
He says, that's enough for me. I'm out of it. So it didn't take him too long to learn his lesson on that. And at that time, we had two jobs. We had our normal job working with iron, and then at the end of the day, when we punch out, we go down there and vaccinate cattle and stuff like that. So
Well, it seems like your dad was all or nothing.
Yeah,
when
he
he's
was.
committed, blinders are on, let's move forward. Nothing's going to get in the way, whether it's a bond, whether it's, the middleman with cattle.
And the best way to describe that as well is that he was that way. And yes, he made some mistakes along the way, but he made so many decisions that there was enough positive decisions that he made out of all the good ones and bad ones that it kept propelling us forward. Because not every decision was a good one. Yeah. And but he made enough of them that enough of them were good to keep propelling us forward.
So vendors are critical with your business. It started with hydraulics. You had a vendor that was providing those. You ended up bringing it in-house.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I'm probably going to tell the least amount about this one because it's still a little bit of a sore subject. But we were buying a commodity from a supplier, and his commodity was actually in the specifications. We didn't have a choice but to use what was in the specs. And it was our job to install his product and complete the finished unit and get it to the end user. And so in this case, what had happened was that as we started using this product, we started finding problems with it. There were wiring harnesses that were not right. There was a lot of things that we were finding that was substandard, and we're the one that's on the hook for it. He's the one that's spec'd in, and he's doing a substandard job. But at the end of the day, when we deliver it to the end user, it's got to be right. And so we were on the hook for it. So we were troubleshooting. We were sending parts back and forth, stuff like that. We had a lot of money and time expended in correcting his errors. At the end of the contract, we called for a meeting. They came to the office, and we had a sit-down meeting at the conference table and, saying, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we're drawing the line at. These are itemized bits of information here. We feel like you guys need to step up to the plate, and you need to take care of these things. You know that they happen because we sent parts back and forth. We had labor stripping this stuff out of a truck when we found out it didn't work and things of that nature. And we've got a lot of money tied up in this as far as labor. There was a lot of verbiage, conversation going back and forth. They didn't step up to the plate. And quite honestly, this was something that we had kind of been wanting to do in the back of our mind for a while because we're buying it from him and we're vertically integrated as anyone is. And to be honest with you, when the meeting was over and we realized that they weren't going to step up to the plate at all, they got up and left out. And me and my dad was still sitting there at the conference table in his office. And they got up and left out. And before they could even get to their car, me and Dad looked at each other in the eye and said, it's time. And so what we had been attempting to do and talking about doing, it was just time to do it. And that led us into a new company and new product offerings and stuff like that. And we have never looked back. It's probably one of the best decisions we've ever made because we have a product that is turning the industry on their ear. And it's something that company could have done. But they didn't have my truck driver mind where I've had Class A CDLs for 46 years. And me have all these thoughts and things conjured up in my mind as to what needs to be done and innovative ideas and stuff like that. They got a team of engineers that could have done the same thing. But I dare say any one of their engineers probably don't have a CDL. One of my main engineers, he didn't have one when we hired him. I gave him X number of days that when you come on board, you're going to have a CDL.
Yeah.
You're going to understand what it takes to get a CDL, and you're going to understand what it takes to keep one. And periodically, you're going to be driving trucks. And this is going to be part of your job too. You may know all these electronics and how to write code and do these programs and stuff like that. I want you to know what you're doing it for.
Yeah. Why
you're doing it. And that, oh my gosh, that has paid dividends. Time and time again has paid dividends. And quite honestly, we're somewhat of a rival to them. They were really worried in the beginning, but they're less worried now. Mm-hmm. But we're not done yet. And I don't wish anything bad on anyone.
Sure.
All I ask for them is them to step up, and they decided not to. And that just gave us the reason to do what we did.
Through big challenge comes opportunity, right?
True.
And then you actually have a little bit more control over the quality of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think the lesson here is that, businesses are great, but only if they focus on the customer and the end product. All the questions can be answered. What's the right thing to do? Well, if it benefits the customer, then that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It might not be so easy to make that happen, though, right?
Sometimes you know in your mind, in your heart of hearts, that what the customer is talking to you about or what they're discussing with you is they're just not familiar and they don't understand your product like you do. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of have to let them say what they want to say. And you've got to figure out a way to redirect him in the direction he should be going. And, would you be willing to give this a try? And I have many a time say, hey, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're asking for. But would you listen to what we've got to say and see if it makes sense for you? And if it does, we'll build it. We'll put it on your truck. If it don't work, I'll take it off. And we have gained a lot of customers that way. Mm-hmm. And we don't do as much of that anymore as we used to. But it certainly paid dividends back in the day because that customer knew his business, but we knew our product that was related to his business.
What other things would you like to add to this segment of our conversation before we go on to a second one?
Mm-hmm. And one thing I will have to comment on, and I should have done this in the beginning, is the fact that out of all the responses I got from the first 2 episodes and how well that seems to have gone, and knowing that there's a story to tell, this is the perfect venue to be able to do that. And like I had told you earlier, I don't have to write a book now. But you can rest assured there's going to be some podcasts / videos / things of that nature in our future as well, because we're learning from this as well. Yeah. I'm not out to take your job by no means.
Oh, no.
It's not going to be a format like this.
There.
Yeah, we're not going to be taking your job, but it's going to be specifically about our product and some things that we probably need to be doing. Yeah. And we're already discussing that internally.
If people talk about it, some people want to listen.
But you know what? When they want to know our story, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send them to your podcast.
Absolutely.
And say, I can't tell it any better than I told it in those episodes that preceded us here. It was told there.
That's perfect.
And I just can't add anything else to it.
Well, this has been a great first of our 2 recordings today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I have enjoyed it as well.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Bulldog, featuring Pat Godwin Jr., president of the Godwin Group. We hope you found this conversation entertaining and informative. Be sure to check out prior conversations with Pat Godwin Jr. from last year on Beyond the Bulldog. Your feedback is important to us so we can produce the episodes that you want to hear. So let us know what you think about this podcast and some ideas to make it better. With that, we're always in search of new guests and topics. Who has helped you most in life and in trucking? What trucking challenges create the biggest headaches? What principles or tips help you create efficiency and increase profit? Please share these people and topics in the comments section below.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to follow the Bulldog.